Tyron Smith, no more Tyler Biadasz. The Dallas Cowboys are back to the drawing board looking for their starting left tackle and their starting center. Now they can either draft some new pieces or play a little chess with the current pieces they have. We're talking all things offensive line here on Building the Board today. Now we've got Nick Harris to go ahead and join the show. We've got Kyle Youmans joining the show later to break down some possibilities of who the Cowboys could be looking at for that position. Now, Nick, I mean, I've got to obviously start with the number one question. Yeah. How do you fill the shoes of Tyron Smith? I mean, an 8-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro. I mean,
you don't.
Right?
I think that's a simple way to do it. You don't. He's a Hall of Famer. He's a guy that's going to be in that Ring of Honor whenever he retires one day up in AT&T Stadium. You don't replace that. But what you can do is bring in a solid guy to fill in at left tackle that can protect Dak Prescott, that can be just as dominant in pass protection, but also probably give you a little bit more youth, a little bit more experience, or not experience, a little bit more reliability up front to be able to stay on the field for a 17-game season. That's probably what you're looking for the most from a left tackle, because if you had one knock on Tyron Smith over the course of the last 6 or 7 seasons, it's his reliability to stay on the field. So bringing a young guy that doesn't have a lot of injury history, he's really durable, really tough, that can fill that spot at left tackle and still protect Dak Prescott.
You've got Tyler Smith, who is, as of now, going to be playing left guard. You've got Chuma Edoga that they re-signed. How much confidence do you have in maybe Chuma Edoga, who could possibly play left tackle? He's that kind of swing guy, but is there confidence there?
Not for me. I think for me, I like seeing Chuma Edoga whenever he's working at guard. I think he's got a better build to be a guard. I think he's got a better skill set to be a left guard, and I think he's a depth option at that point as well. That's when an injury pops up, Chuma Edoga can slide in at left guard or at right guard and be able to kind of work in that interior. When it comes to the tackle situation, as it sits today, you're probably looking at Tyler Smith being your best option at left tackle, but then looking behind him, you have Awesome Richards, who was a 5th-round pick last year, wasn't able to touch the field. Don't really know what he can bring from a skill set perspective yet so far. Matt Waletzko going into his 3rd season, but his first 2 seasons have been harbored by that shoulder subluxation injury. So how can he, once he gets on the field, what does that look like for him? So there are still guys in the room that can provide depth at tackle. You just don't know what that looks like. And it goes back to that durability conversation whenever you're talking about Matt Waletzko. Do you want a guy who's coming off 2 injuries? That's why I think going into this draft, you have to bring in a young guy that is A, durable, and B, ready to step in and start on day one in case you do need that.
The Cowboys are definitely in a position that they do not want to be heading into the draft. I mean, you have to draft a center and you have to draft a left tackle. Where do you start? If you're Jerry Jones, where are you going in the first round?
Yeah, I love talking to Nate Newton about this situation because he always has a very strong opinion about building your offensive line from the inside out. He says go ahead and get a center. For me, it's whatever better player is available there whenever you're picking there in the first round or you're picking there in the second round, whenever you do decide to go ahead and attack that offensive line. Whoever that better player is, you go grab that center. Maybe it's Zach Frazier from West Virginia if you're sitting there in the second, or if you're in the first, maybe it's a guy like Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU at tackle. It just kind of depends on what your board looks like and where you decide to address those things. But Tyler Smith gives this franchise the flexibility to be able to pick from either of those positions and feel good about where they can go forward with that.
Something that you've said all offseason long is that this talented, deep class of offensive linemen, there's a lot of talent there. We've got Kyle Youmans, though, to break all of that down.
All right, things get serious whenever you're talking offensive linemen in the Dallas Cowboys because, like you guys just outlined so eloquently, they need some offensive linemen, and they need them in multiple spots. So I've got 2 prospects that are popular names throughout the draft process for the Cowboys. One is an offensive tackle, and one is just, let's say, offensive lineman because he can play a little bit of everywhere. Let's start with the tackle, Tyler Guyton. By this point, if you kept up with the NFL draft, you know Tyler Guyton and you know what he brings to the table. Honorable mention, all Big 12 in 2022, and he was a mainstay for the Sooners on that offensive line. You also know what he can bring to the table because he's got a high ceiling. He's still learning on some certain elements. Here's what he could bring. Let's start things off. Red River rivalry. This is at the Cotton Bowl. Here he is on the outside going up against this Texas edge rusher. Look at the kick step. Watch his feet here. Solidified all the way through. He has great footwork. I like his kick slides. I like the way he gets outside. His hand placement could get better, like I mentioned. That's one of the ways he can grow his game. But here he handles the edge rusher off the side for Texas quite easily, even with a spin move, easy work, and it allows for a big completion down the field for Oklahoma. Moving on, here's what he can do getting to the next level. Here he is at right tackle. He's going to go flash across the front of this defensive lineman, and then you're going to have an edge rusher or a linebacker off of the second level try and make the tackle. Here's the linebacker that he's going to move out of the way. Watch that. Disregards that. moves him out of the way. Big run for OU. He likes to keep his eyes forward, keep his eyes at the second level, and in doing so, he's going to open up some big running lanes for whoever might be toting the rock. And then he's got some athleticism. He's 6'7" with 82-inch wingspan arms, and he can still get outside and run, and I like that a lot. Look at this in the screen game. He's all the way outside. Remember, he started all the way back over here, and now he's all the way outside the hash marks, and he's not done yet. Get out of my way. And he pushes him to the side as well, helping pick up a first down for Oklahoma. The thing with Guyton is that he's inexperienced where you're probably going to play him most, at left tackle. He has one start at left tackle throughout his career, and I talked about the hand placement. There's some fundamental things, keeping his pad height lower at 6'7" and keeping that leverage that's going to keep him in the league for a long time. I don't have as many knocks on this next guy. Graham Barton is my top interior offensive lineman in the entire draft class, and he's there for a reason. The Duke offensive lineman, he played tackle, he played guard, he played center. He can play all three at the next level, and he's a smart one at doing so as well. Let's take a look here at what he brings to the table at the left tackle spot. So here he is on the edge. This is him just out-leveraging opponents. He knows the physicality that it takes to succeed. Here he is just moving a guy out of the way and opening up a great cut lane backside for Duke. Now, same thing against an elite defense. This is Florida State, a team that went undefeated because of how good their defensive line was. You've got a four-man front here from Florida State. You're going to basically take all of that out at one time. Here he goes, Graham Barton. He's going to get after it here, after the snap. There he is, one guy taken down, and now he pushes him out of the play, keeps him at bay enough, just one-on-one, to get to the second level and provide, again, a chance to move the sticks. Dallas needs offensive linemen. That's not a secret. They're probably going to take an offensive lineman in the first round. That's also not really a secret. The secret is, who is it going to be? Because there are certain fits that fit this team better now than they would later down the line, and there are different fits that could help you win now as opposed to help you win later down the line. It's up to the Cowboys front office to decide how to outweigh those different challenges.
Do you believe that Graham Barton will be available at pick number 24?
You know, it's funny. I've always been a Graham Barton guy from the beginning. I know on our draft show podcast, he was the first name mentioned, the first name of the entire process. So from the beginning, I didn't think he'd be available. The more I'm looking at the wide receiver position, the cornerbacks, these quarterbacks early on, the more non-offensive linemen that can go in the early parts of this first round is going to just push a guy like Graham Barton back. Now, do I think he's going to be there? Probably not. I'd say it's probably a 60% chance he's gone by the time that Dallas gets to the board at pick number 24. But that 40% gets it exciting enough to say, hey, if he's there, he needs to be the selection because he can start at any number of positions. Gives you some flexibility with Tyler Smith at left guard or left tackle, and then you roll from there with a guy who's going to be a starter for a long time to come.
Yeah, the one thing that kind of offers some pessimism is the fact that there's 3 teams within the 5 picks before the Cowboys here.
I don't want to hear about this.
That also needs centers. You got the Steelers, you got the Eagles, and then you got the Dolphins as well. Now, the Dolphins did bring in a free agent center, but it was on a short-term deal. They still need one for the future. I mean, those are 3 teams that are really trying to battle for a center. You got Jacksonville, who can need a guard and maybe take Graham Barton. So if you're Dallas, you're really hoping he slips past those teams.
Nick, who are some names that you have in mind that the Cowboys could possibly take a look at?
Yeah, other than the 2 that Kyle mentioned, who I feel like could be first-round options. You also got Jordan Morgan out of Arizona. He's got some tackle guard flex. He's got a ton of experience from his time with the Wildcats. Talk about durable. He's one of those guys that can be. Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU. He transferred in from Oregon. He's played right tackle. He's played left tackle. He's also the cousin of Penei Sewell, who went in the top 10 a couple of years ago. Some other options that you could possibly think of at the center position. You got Zach Frazier out of West Virginia, who might be more of a second-round option. But if you want to take a guy in the first round, you look at Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. He's a guy that played 4 of the 5 offensive line positions in his time with the Ducks. Even played a little defensive tackle in a bowl game when the team needed it. He's got a lot of physicality, a lot of aggressiveness that can really work in that interior.
You bring up a lot of great names that are in there. Frazier, Powers Johnson, and Suamataia that are all possible 24th overall picks or even trade back options. You think about how front-loaded this class is in terms of offensive linemen. There's an opportunity to grab some guys even if they do trade out and trade back into that first round or even the early parts of the second round. Some names to keep an eye on ahead of that. Amarius Mims out of Georgia. You talk about a big body and a guy who will go in the first round. If he ends up slipping to 24, I think that's a conversation as a Tyron Smith replacement. Inexperienced there. He's only started 8 games. I mean, that's the thing. But he started him at Georgia, and he looked really good in doing so, but there's still a way that you can grow his game at the next level. So there are some names, possible falls, possible trade backs, but either way, I think an offensive lineman's pretty likable early.
I'm going to ruffle some feathers a little bit just because I
Let's do it.
have to, right?
No, let's do that. Let's do it.
Come on. This is supposed to be easy.
No, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Let's just say the Cowboys draft a running back first round, right? Okay, let's say second round they go with linebacker. We're on maybe third, fourth round, later in the rounds.
I don't like
you go
this
on,
scenario.
and the Cowboys are now like, let's maybe draft an offensive lineman. Who are some of the guys that you'd say could potentially be available there?
Can I give 3 names?
Go for it.
I'm going to start with Blake Fisher out of Notre Dame. That's a tackle who played on the left side and on the right side. Joe Alt is the #1 tackle in this class, in my opinion. He's from Notre Dame. He played on the other side of Blake Fisher. Blake Fisher, he brings that type of experience that he played with under Joe Alt. He has a little bit some of those same tendencies, but he's really clean overall. He doesn't do anything poor. I think he's a guy that you could bring in, and I think he could be a day 1 starter with the right development. A couple of other guys that I think could work on the interior if you were to address that instead. You got Hunter Norzad out of Penn State, really good anchor. He's shined here at the East-West Shrine Bowl in late January. And you can also look at Julian Pearl out of Illinois. He's probably a late 3rd round, maybe a day 3 type option. Played guard there at Illinois, even played a little bit of tackle, but I think he could play center at the next level as well. He's a guy that's got a lot of physicality, really good size. I think he could play into that role as well.
And I think those names they're right up there at the top of the list in terms of early day 3 options, or even late day 2. If, like you're saying, you're going into the latter parts of the 3rd round, I'm getting scared. I need to pick up a guy maybe there, because then you've got to wait from pick in the 80s in the 3rd round to pick all the way in the 170s in that 5th round. You've got a long time to wait, so you may stretch on a guy because you haven't addressed the offensive line need early, but you like him overall. I think there's a way to get it done. Now, 2 other names I want to bring up. Matt Gonsalves from Pitt, offensive tackle. He was a 30 visit as well, somebody that can bring that to the table and do that. Now, on the other side of it, I really do like the possibility of maybe a 3rd round pick. You haven't addressed it early. Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. I'm willing him to slide on back. I think there's going to be an opportunity maybe in the middle parts of the 3rd round that he could go ahead of the Cowboys, but if he's there, I think there's great value at doing so.
Well, the Cowboys are in position to need guys to come in immediately and make an impact. Let's hopefully that scenario does not happen, and the Cowboys really get the positions that they need. But that's a wrap for the offseason Building the Board season and episodes. We'll be back next offseason. But for now, make sure to follow us on DallasCowboys.com. We'll have all the draft show needs that you want to follow, Cowboys Nation.